central channel just to get the system open a little bit and see where that takes us. It's got the right leg is short, appears to be short. Wait for a few moments. So anyway, what I do when I'm holding this position, which a lot of people know is called the crossover, it's part of the central channel release, a very basic part of it. I'm looking through her body and I'm noticing, number one, what is the quality of movement? The subtle movements that should be moving through the system, like a wave motion, expansion of the rib cage, a little bit movement in the neck and cranium, and then see what movements are there and which ones look like they're struggling and which ones maybe are absent, where the body looks like it's just not alive. Just taking notes of that. This is a general adjustment of the information system. And the leg that appears to be short, it's not really short bone length-wise, but it appears to be short because of restriction in the body, muscle tissue. It's showing us it's a reaction. That short leg is a reaction to restriction in the information flow of the body. Okay. I'm going to wait a little bit. One thing I'm noticing is that there's a kind of a stiff and rigid feeling in the right leg, in the right foot, heel. More tension in the Achilles tendon also on the right side. And trying to bring the heels together to take a look. There's kind of a resistance to that movement. And that is oftentimes showing another part of the central channel, which I'm going to check now. Central channel, I know a lot of people watching know, reacts to very soft input, very soft stimulation. If you give stronger, other parts may react, but usually there's not a very good reaction at the central channel level. See? And so what I was able to find out was that by just testing the central channel up here around her second cervical vertebrae, I could see that it released some of the restriction in that adduction movement. And that's an indicator that then there's a restriction coming from this level. Now the C2 is a place where the what's called the meninges or the dural tube attaches. So again, I'm getting really light stimulation here because that's what this dural tube responds to. Very light. What I noticed while I made the contact was that there was more movement down here. And if you really look with your peripheral vision, there was an up and down, an increase in the range of movement, but also there was like a little bit of a circular pattern to it. And that shows that it's circling away from an area of restriction and moving through an area that's more free. So you can watch that and get an idea whether the right or left would have more restriction. It looks like it likes to try to migrate over to the left side, so I would say that the right side, which goes together with the short leg, which if I look down and observe with my peripheral vision, I can see that it's trying to soften. But anyway, this movement kind of the range is increasing a little bit, but it's moving away to the left side. Particularly, yeah, so it's like swaying up and swaying back with a slight left side bias. And treatment of the central channel, it requires that after we have a release or a correction, that we give the body a little bit of time to process. So unlike some other forms of work that we do where it's continuous movement, continuous touch, continuous hands-on, this has a period, these periods where we wait and see how the body's going to take the adjustment, process it, and then lead us to the next place that we're going. So you may have an idea about like how that's going to unfold, like it's a map that you see, but sometimes you have to also be ready to take detours if they present themselves. Now another thing, I don't know how clear this could be on the camera, but overall there's just like a slight bias of the rib cage going to the right side. It's like, but it's very, very slight, displaced the right side, and here's the center line. And you might be able to see how it's shifted, but it's very subtle. There's also a little bit more buildup of the muscles there. Now, that movement of adduction is more free now. And that shows us that there was an accurate assessment before with the contact at the C2 vertebrae in connection with the central channel, dural, meninges, however you want to identify it. You feel like you've relaxed a little bit, you know? Yeah. Still waiting for this little bit of processing. And I can tell this correction is still adjusting and the body's still adapting because there's still like this really soft feeling down here in the adduction. And what was previously appearing as the short leg now is actually the leg that appears to be slightly longer. So it was kind of like this release, which is usually like an overcompensation. When you feel it restrict back a little bit, then it's showing that the adapting of that adjustment is more or less complete, and then you can move on to what you're seeing next. What I use a lot of times is that whatever catches my attention, I don't right away jump to that place, but if it keeps drawing my attention, then I'm considering more and more that this is a place to move toward with the work that we're doing. And so I keep getting drawn back to this upper thoracic area. I'm drawn back to this imbalance between the right side, and so since it keeps coming back and coming back, I have the feeling to move there now and give it a bit of attention. And I think I'm going to work by creating some kind of movement, encouraging movement, springy motion in the ribs. also use my heel to work with sections of the thoracic spine, upper thoracic. You can usually grab like 3, even 4 vertebrae like this at the spinous process and work with that spring action that the vertebrae should have. And if it's not quite there, you can introduce it, encourage it. As I got here, the spinous process, this has got buried too far down into the musculature, so I'll have to go to my fingertips to get the same kind of action. But I like this technique where you use the heel of the hand to grab 2, 3, or 4 of the spinous process and then introduce the springing action like that. So now as I get to this level, we're sinking down between the muscles, so I have to go in. Special operation. You can use like thumbs, fingertips, knuckles, whatever you can to grab a hold of those spinous processes and introduce the springing. Different rhythms, different degrees of amplitude, testing, introducing further range of motion. Sometimes if you have an area like right here, it's a little bit unwilling to move. So start out smaller in the range and introduce further. And sometimes this one is resisting this movement, or a little lacking in the springing action, so I can come over and assist with movement on the rib cage, and that helps to free up the space and allow further movement of the vertebrae. And she does a lot of horseback riding. She teaches riding, trains horses. She competes jumping and riding. So there's a lot of compression in that. And also she's had her share of injuries. And I feel like this is one of the areas that takes compression for her. And so I want to try to soften this and get more movement there. And then after you work with it for a while, go back and see if it's more willing to move right at the local level. And I'm really zeroing in on this spot right now because not only is it resistant to the springing action, but it's also feels like it's recessed or pulled in anterior. So I want to try to give it some kind of spring action, introduce that movement, but also work with it to try to release the force that's pulling its anterior so much. And so I can go directly to the vertebrae like this. And it is interesting, and I won't explain the whole thing now, some of you already know it, but it's resistant this direction. And going this way, which is more to the right, it's more willing to spring and flex this way, but not when I go to the left. And this shows us something about the alignment that I may or may not go into. But if I take both sides of the rib cage and I just jockey back and forth, I'm just trying to open the space there. And now I'm going to keep going down more to the lower thoracic and the lumbars. So I feel flexibility, I mean pretty good flexibility, could be better in some spots, but I also feel this compression that I think comes from the work that she does, which is writing and equestrian centered activities. And I'm taking note of this because I might do a remote adjustment from the cranial sutures. And this is about T. Yeah. T7. I mean, when we go to the suture and find it there, you can also go by feel. So if it's 7, 8, I mean, it's not always that precise, but there's a feeling to it. Kind of a locked in forward position of the shoulder joint. So it's a good way to release it, just to traction it. But with the emphasis on the front hand, not that so much the back is to stabilize, but traction lateral, posterior, toward yourself, and then up a little bit. Soften, just wait to see if the body will release it. I'm doing the same traction, but now I'm applying the force a little bit diagonally downward like this. It's the same thing, lift, posterior, out, but then also down toward the feet, another angle.
And as you hold it, are you working with the fascia at all?
Well, when it softens and it releases the forward compression that's in there, there's definitely fascia release involved. And you can feel that. It's the sensation of the softening. And usually that's accompanied by an increase of the breathing. Now this shoulder is also forward compression, but not near as much as the right side. So it's not going to need as much attention. I'm stopping right now because I can feel and see that the body's processing on its own. It's making its adjustments internally on its own, so it doesn't need any input from me right this moment.
And do you notice that mainly from the movement in the body?
Because there's increased movement, greater amplitude of the breathing, but the movement has actually come up into this area, and that's one of the things that becomes the intention when you're usually when you're attracted to a place, because something is trying to get moving, something's trying to bring the life force there. And so, when there's more movement, more softening, this part definitely having more movement right now than when we started. Lifting, spreading up in here. Seems to be another central channel related. Ask from the body. Definitely was. This is what we call stage 5.
So Saul's on the sacrotuberal ligament and C2.
Yeah. It might not be that apparent on the camera, but because of the increase of the breathing and the increase of movement coming more up in the body and then down into the body, particularly around the pelvic area, there's this tractioning, this horizontal tractioning taking place, an elongating. Now, usually when you see this, the person, they become aware of how their body feels. They either feel like they're floating or sinking, or that the body's heavy or light. Could be any of those, but sometimes none of those. But I'll just ask, do you feel any of those things, like you're floating or sinking?
Well, maybe feeling heavy.
You feel heavy, okay. Now, I feel like we made there's like a lot of adjustments took place. And I think the best thing right now is just to let the body process pretty much where it is now. This is like a big movement from where we started. But I think I'm going to go and I'm going to revisit this seventh cervical vertebrae, and just get a feel again for this resistance. And then I'm going to go and do it's a little bit more of a remote type of adjustment, but because of the nerve circuits, the proprioceptive nerve circuits, you can influence the thoracics through the cranial sutures.
And why would you address the vertebrae from the cranial sutures rather than directly on it like you were before?
Right now I don't want to move her, that's one thing, because if you do a manual type of adjustment, turn them over and apply a little bit of force to it. But right now with the way her body's working, and there you go, right there was a big shift. I would rather see if I could kind of encourage the body to make this adjustment by itself without me applying any force. So I'm coming to this area and in a way giving it some information. It's like, okay, here's this circuit has like a disruption, a blockage, misalignment. And then, so just and then there's a series of different responses that you get at your fingertips. And then a procedure that I use. So again, it's because there's like in a house, you have like electrical circuits, the body has like nerve circuits. And right now where I am in the cranium is related to the thoracic circuits, let's say. It's like kind of just trying to make an analogy. And usually when you get a response at the suture, that response also indicates that there's a response at the related vertebrae. And I don't know if it's showing up on the camera, but you can see that actually the whole body is responding. Okay, I feel like I got that. And so what I go back, do now is I go back and I kind of retest to see if I can notice anything. And sometimes it's very little, but sometimes it can be quite, this is quite good. I can't say that I always get this much, but I got quite a good release. So it's much more springy here now, much more soft. And so again, I'm going to just let the body work with that on its own. If I right away start to do something else, in a way it's like confusing. And if the body has different restrictions and interference with the processing of energy, then the ability to process slows down. So you need to give time for the body to process. So it's kind of like a computer where the memory's all full, or like that. It slows down, needs more time to process.
Dawn said this is awesome to watch the body responding, like inner life force being activated from the cranial suture adjustment.
There's more flaring motion at the end of the in-breath. This pulling there. It's like this.
Here, wait, I don't have that in the camera. Can you do that again?
Like this. Might be hard to see, but it's pretty clear. Yeah.
So for those of you who are watching who haven't studied the central channel work, these contacts that Saul's making either near the sacrum or on the cranium or neck are designed to help relieve meningeal stress patterns in the body, stress patterns that are in the fascia, the spinal cord.
And I call it central channel because I feel like it, and I think it's clear that it's related to the governing vessel. And also that the governing vessel is an intermediary for all the chakras, which are a little higher frequency, then interacting directly with the governing vessel, and then regulating all the meridians, and then also distributing information to all the meridians. So it's a pretty vital channel to keep clear. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to end on this.
So working with the governing vessel or chakra adjustment would be affecting the central channel as well.
Yeah, so I feel like I got a lot of really significant adjustments. As life goes on, there's always more stress. But one of the indicators that we can see when the body is getting freer over time is that we process present time stress more easily. We're not holding on to it. But in order to get to that place, a lot of times we have to clear out held on to past time stress, just slowing down information, distorting information, keeping us trapped in past time information, and not allowing we'll use the analogy of the computer, to process in real time. So when we're working in the beginning, we're freeing from the past interference of information. But one of the telltale things, in how the person functions day to day in life is that they can, as we all will, and will not end that we have stress, but we can process it, harmonize it, move through it without it shutting down or causing a crisis or things like that. It can even become kind of an adventure dealing with stress when the system's free. The dealing with stress challenge for the next 30 days. Something like putting a bucket of cold water on your head. Okay, so I'm going to leave this treatment right where it is. I think that it was a good treatment because so many things softened, the leg length and the adduction improved, general motion in the body improved, and I don't know, Chino, do you have any comments about anything, like how you feel during the treatment? It could be positive, it could be not positive.
Very positive.
Very positive. Anything specific?
The vertebrae you were working at is that I felt how it got soft.
You felt the vertebrae get soft. Uh-huh. Do you feel like you can breathe there better? Or you didn't notice that?
Huh. Maybe.
All right, well, thanks. All right, we're good.
Okay.
It's great seeing everybody, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day, night. Hope to
Thanks.
see you all soon.